The last words my daughter said before blocking my number still echo in my mind. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and whispered, "My husband comes first now, Dad." Then she walked away without looking back. A few seconds later, I called her, but the call went straight to voicemail. I tried sending a message. It never reached her. That was the night I realized I had lost the little girl I spent my whole life protecting. If emotional family stories with meaningful life lessons speak to your heart, I'd truly appreciate you subscribing to Behind Dad. Before we continue, I'd also like to mention that the pictures shown throughout this story are creative visual recreations inspired by these memories. They are not real photographs from my personal life. Her name was Emily, and she had always been my greatest joy. After her mother passed away, we became even closer. We celebrated birthdays together, fixed things around the house, and talked almost every evening. When she married Ryan, I truly welcomed him into the family. I wanted him to feel like a son, not just a son-in-law. At first, everything seemed wonderful. But little by little, I noticed Emily becoming quieter. She canceled our weekly dinners, stopped answering my calls, and always seemed nervous whenever Ryan was around. The final argument happened at their house. I gently told Emily that I was worried because I barely recognized the confident daughter I had raised. Before she could answer, Ryan stepped between us. He smiled politely, but his words felt cold. He said every married woman should put her husband before everyone else, including her father. Emily lowered her head and quietly agreed. Then she looked at me and said those heartbreaking words that changed everything. I drove home that evening with tears in my eyes. Every instinct told me to keep fighting for my daughter, but another part of me knew I couldn't force someone to let me love them. So I stopped calling. I stopped texting. I prayed for her every single day and hoped she would one day remember that my door had never been closed. I had no idea that exactly 2 years later, my phone would ring late one rainy night, and the voice on the other end would be barely recognizable. For 2 long years, my phone never rang with Emily's name. Birthdays came and went. Christmas mornings felt empty. I still bought a small gift for her every year, wrapped it carefully, and placed it in the hallway closet. I couldn't bring myself to throw those presents away. They became quiet reminders that a father's love doesn't disappear just because the phone stops ringing. Every night before bed, I wondered if she was happy or if she simply wanted me to believe she was. Then, one stormy evening, my phone lit up with a number I hadn't seen in years. I answered without saying a word. All I could hear at first was someone crying. After several seconds, Emily whispered, "Dad, it's me." Her voice was trembling so badly that I barely recognized it. Every painful memory from the last 2 years rushed back into my mind. But hearing my daughter cry mattered more than remembering my own hurt. She finally told me the truth. Ryan hadn't been the man she believed he was. Over the years, he secretly borrowed money, opened credit cards in both their names, and promised investors things he could never deliver. Then, one morning, he disappeared without leaving a note. He emptied the bank accounts, abandoned the apartment, and left Emily alone with overwhelming debt collectors knocking at her door. She admitted she had been too ashamed to call me because she remembered the last conversation we ever had. I closed my eyes and tried to steady my breathing. Part of me wanted to ask why she had pushed me away. Another part only cared that my daughter was scared and alone. Before I could answer, she quietly said, "Dad, I don't even know if I deserve your help anymore." Her words broke my heart because no child should ever believe they have to earn a parent's love. I looked out the window at the rain, took a slow breath, and reached for my car keys. I knew exactly what I was going to say to her, but those 5 simple words would change both of our lives forever. I held the phone tightly and finally spoke the 5 words that had been sitting in my heart for 2 long years. "I'm already on my way." The moment those words left my mouth, I heard Emily break down completely. She kept apologizing between sobs, but I gently told her to save her strength until I arrived. During the drive, I couldn't stop thinking about the little girl who used to run into my arms after every bad day at school. No matter how much time had passed, she was still my daughter. That truth had never changed. When I reached her apartment building, I barely recognized her. She looked exhausted, frightened, and much thinner than I remembered. The hallway was filled with unopened bills and final notices pushed under her door. Inside, the apartment was almost empty. Ryan had taken nearly everything of value before disappearing. Emily confessed that she had hidden the truth from everyone because Ryan kept promising he would fix everything. Instead, every promise became another lie, and every lie pulled her farther away from the people who truly loved her. She handed me a folder containing loan papers, collection letters, and legal notices. I quietly read through them, realizing the situation was serious but not impossible. Then she looked at me with tears in her eyes and asked the question she had feared for years. "Dad, can you ever forgive me?" I reached across the table, held her shaking hands, and reminded her that forgiveness begins the moment someone chooses honesty over fear. We cried together, not because the problems had disappeared, but because we no longer had to face them alone. Just as we began making a plan, someone knocked on the apartment door. Emily froze. She whispered that debt collectors had been coming almost every day. I opened the door expecting another demand for money. Instead, a neatly dressed woman introduced herself as a fraud investigator. She held up an official file and quietly said, "Mr. James, we've finally located Ryan. But before we arrest him, there's one document inside this file that you and your daughter need to read together." The investigator sat quietly across from us and opened the file. Inside was a handwritten statement Ryan had signed after his arrest. I expected excuses, but instead I found a full confession. He admitted he had hidden massive debts long before he married Emily. Rather than telling the truth, he kept borrowing more money and using deception to cover every mistake. The deeper he fell, the more he isolated Emily from the people who loved her, afraid someone would discover what he had done. Reading those words filled me with sadness, not satisfaction. One lie had become a lifetime of pain for everyone around him. Over the following months, Emily worked with attorneys and financial counselors to separate the debts that had been created through fraud. It wasn't easy. There were difficult meetings, sleepless nights, and moments when she wanted to give up. I stayed beside her through every appointment, reminding her that rebuilding a life takes patience, not perfection. Slowly, the fear that had lived in her eyes was replaced by hope. She found a new job, moved into a small apartment, and began smiling again for the first time in years. One evening, while we shared dinner in my home, Emily quietly looked at me and asked why I answered her call after everything that had happened. I smiled and told her the truth. A father's heart keeps a light on, even when the road home is dark. She reached across the table, squeezed my hand, and whispered that she would never let silence come between us again. In that moment, I felt as though I had finally gotten my daughter back, not because the past had disappeared, but because honesty had replaced fear. Looking back now, I understand that forgiveness doesn't mean pretending the hurt never happened. It means refusing to let pain have the final word. If this story touched your heart, please share your thoughts in the comments because someone may need the courage to reconnect with a loved one today. Share this story with someone who believes family is worth fighting for. Thank you for spending this time with me on Behind Dad. Never let pride or fear steal the people who truly love you, because one phone call, answered with compassion, can change a family's future forever.